Happy Thursday. Welcome to Justine. I hope you guys are having a great day. I would like to thank everyone who tuned in for episode 1. While I am not pleased with how it turned out, I'm very happy that I took that leap of faith. I thank you all for bearing with me and for following along. So I figured that we would just jump right into my road to addiction. If you are new here, my name is Justine, and I am a recovering alcoholic and addict. Today is Thursday, July 31st, 2025, and I am 1,335 days sober. So when I moved to Maryland, I was 18 years old. I was reunited with my paternal grandfather. He was never around his children, more or less the grandkids. So I had heard many stories of him, when I was growing up, and I had ran away for a short period of time when I was 15. And I think I spent 2 weeks here with him, maybe 2 weeks. Very short lived. So in those 2 weeks, I really did not get to know him. So I think I always had that curiosity of who he was. So I was very excited to, come here and get to know him and start a relationship with him. But my grandfather was an alcoholic, and he was an alcoholic who owned a bar. When I started working at the bar, I met my best friend, Addiction. I had a few drinks here or there in my teenage years, but it was never something that I was really into. I slowly noticed the bar was bringing the drinking out. I would get off of work and I would drink, and I would spend my time off of work at the bar. So this went on for several months, and in the summer of 2008, I met my son's father at the bar, and we started dating. And in February of 2009, I found out that I was pregnant. So, of course, I stopped working at the bar, and, I lived a healthy lifestyle. We got a small little house, and I was really excited to start my own little family. And in September of 2009, Christopher was born. And after he was born, I went through a really rough time with postpartum depression. And it was really rough. I wish I would have sought therapy or reached out in some way. Postpartum depression is very real. I don't think there's enough resources, and I don't think it's talked about as much as it should be. But that's for a whole different episode. So I really struggled with that. I felt like I had lost myself, my identity. And so as I was pulling myself out of this depression, I knew it was time for me to go back to work. And, I made great money bartending, and I liked my job. So I went back to the bar. I had a feeling that it was not going to work, but I still wanted to try. I still wanted to try to make as much money as I could. There's nothing like working and walking out with a couple $100 in your pocket every night. So I really tried to maintain bartending and my family all at the same time. And it just wasn't working. So Christopher's father was basically like, it's us or the bar. So, of course, I chose my family. And found myself having to look for a whole new career path. So I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I did know I wanted to be around people. I've always liked working with people. And I like having a one-on-one with people. So I was applying, and I got a job at the Hilton Garden Inn as a front desk agent. I liked the job. I liked the work and I loved working with the clients, but I was not Hilton Garden in material. I did not fit in. So I kind of knew right then and there that it wasn't going to work, but I was going to give it my all and I was going to try. One thing that I am very proud of my character for, but is a downfall, is I have seen every walk of life. I was, raised in a small country town. I've lived in inner cities. I've seen every type of addict, every type of alcoholic. I've been poor. I've been rich. I've had homes. I've been homeless. I've had cars. I've lost them. I have seen it all. I've lived most of it all. And I just do not believe that you judge people based off how they look or how much money they may have. And unfortunately, I found myself around people who did, and I knew that this is not where I belonged. I knew in my heart that the day I took that job that it was not going to last. But like I said, I was going to give it my all. And I have always been a firm believer that you can learn something from every single job you have and apply it somewhere else. So I wanted to be that sponge and take in everything that I could while I knew I could still handle it. So each day I left that place, I just felt so miserable. I knew that all the small talk was fake, that the friendship, the play dates, all of it was fake. I knew that once I left that bar, nobody would take the time to try to, carry on a friendship with me. And it turned to be true. So, anyways, I lasted maybe 6 months and I just couldn't do it anymore. And I also knew the money that I was making at the hotel was pennies compared to what I could make slinging beer. And money makes the world go round. I caught wind, I don't know, a week or two before I had quit the hotel. I caught wind that a bartender was going to be leaving the bar. And that was definitely one of my driving forces into leaving that hotel. So I gave notice. I worked my last day and came home the very next day. I got myself ready. I loaded Christopher up in the car. We went to the bar and had lunch with my grandfather. And I told him I was coming back to work, that I wanted my job back. And of course, I was welcomed with open arms. And my grandfather and I really kind of got close once my son was born. I am forever thankful that he got to hold my son and he got to see him. I was the only grandchild that I think he ever had a real relationship with, and my son was probably the best part of that man's heart. He turned his cold heart pretty warm, and I'm thankful for that. And I knew that I was making. Ultimately, I made the wrong decision, but at the time, I felt like I was making the best decision. I was going back to making real money, back to where I considered I belonged, and back to my family to help with their business. So I was there for a few months, and my grandfather got really, really sick, really, really fast. And he ended up being taken to Baltimore, and he died in the hospital. And it was really rough. And he left his wife in a mess, a real big mess. My grandfather was living a double life. And looking back now, his wife, my step grandmother, he left her in the same position that I found myself being left in. And I feel really bad for her. And I have some guilt because now that I found myself in that position and feeling so alone, and I only had, my family, my parents, and she only had her sister, so I can relate to how she felt. And it's a horrible feeling, and I will carry that guilt around for the rest of my life because I should have been more caring and more supportive, but there's nothing I can do about that now. So when he died, she knew the mess. She found out the mess that she was in, and she was like, I'm going to have to sell the bar. But we had all agreed to keep it open and try to make as much money as we could while she was going to try to sell it. Selling a business in a bar and in the location we were in wasn't going to happen overnight. So we had plenty of time. Um, things hadn't been really good at home for quite a while. When I look back, I can pinpoint little teeny things that I know were wrong and I know, built up, but I can't tell you exactly why I felt the way that I did. I don't know why he felt the way he felt. And I just started drinking more and more. And that drinking led me to using cocaine. We soon split up. And while things were very rocky, because just like any relationship after a breakup, it's hard. We had a son. We had hatred towards each other as much as we had love. We had anger and resentment, but we worked through it and we established a pretty decent co-parenting relationship for the very beginning. And we made it work. So I was still working at the bar and, we were still waiting for it to sell. And I don't know, a few months after Chris's father and I had split up, here came Alfred walking into the bar. And Alfred and I got very close and we started dating. Al was an alcoholic. There is no other way to put it. I am not here to share Al's story, but I will say that Al had the same addictions as I did. I know that some of his were worse than mine, and I know that he would have no problem with me saying this in my podcast. So the bar sold, and while the bar was selling, Al and I basically knew that we wanted to be together. We wanted to live together. We were going to settle down. And he knew the road that I was on with my drug habit. And he is the reason why I was able to put the drugs down the way I did. And I am forever thankful that I made those choices. And I would still dabble with opioids here and there, but the cocaine was done. And like I said, there was the opiates, but there was also the alcohol, and the alcohol never left. So the bar sold. Al and myself and my son moved into Al's condo that he had purchased before we were together. That's very important to remember in my story. So I was still drinking, but definitely slowed down. Once again, cocaine habit was thrown out the window and things seemed normal. I was really, really proud of myself for the changes that I had made. I was proud of myself for how far I had come. And I was just in a much better place mentally, I think. And leaving the bar, I realized that that was not what I thought it was. That was never where I belonged. That was never home. And, I had made these changes and I had done this and I was doing what was best for my family. And I didn't see anything wrong with still drinking because it wasn't every day. It wasn't all the time. But I didn't fully understand that I was an alcoholic. And when you're an alcoholic, you cannot drink at all. And yes, I know that I was the one who was making myself drink. I was the one who was using. I made these decisions on my own. I was never forced. But I will say this, it was no help that the people I was surrounded with, or I surrounded myself with, were addicts. And everyone loves you when you're using too, or when you're beneficial to them. And I do, deep down, have some anger and resentment for a few certain people because they know the monster that they were creating. I was the youngest bartender to ever work at that bar. I was the youngest customer there. This was not a Applebee's, a Buffalo Wild Wings, a nice waterside bar. This was a filthy dirt floor biker bar where people partied, there were fights, there was drug dealing, there was everything that you could think of. And they all knew exactly where I was headed. And not one of them ever stepped up and said, "Hey, wait a minute, Justine, let me talk to you for a second. Let me tell you a little something." And that was because I was beneficial to them. And when the bar sold, I was no longer needed to make drinks, to run drugs, to buy drugs, to sell those drugs, to party after work, to go to the bars. All of those things disappeared, and all of those so-called friends also disappeared. And that was a really hard thing to process. Um, you know, I guess when you feel like because I established these relationships with these people at the bar, but we were also close outside of work. But once I made the decision to leave and take myself out of that environment, it was hurtful to know where you really stood in somebody's life, what position you played, what role you played, what you meant to them, Here I am going, well, now I know, these people only talk to me because I'm using and drinking and I'm beneficial or whatever the case may be. So definitely went through a rough time with that. I also found myself in a new home in a new neighborhood where I knew no one. The only family I had here in Maryland left and went to Virginia, and it was just me and my son and Alfred. And his family was not very welcoming to me. We can discuss that on another episode, but I was very alone. And I will never make excuses for myself, but I I was tired of feeling alone. So alcohol became my best friend. And it's sad, but that was the one thing that I knew would never leave. So we moved. I hadn't been working at the bar and I was applying at other places. And I was very, very blessed. And I landed a wonderful job at a local family owned business. I went in to be the office assistant and I ended up being the office manager in a few short weeks. And um, that bar taught me a lot, and it gave me the confidence to know that when I went into this new job that I could do this, that I could, make these changes. And I was educated and I was smart. I had learned everything that I had learned, and I was ready to start this new journey. So I'm going to end part 1 here because this is when things really start to get rough and you soon see the highs and lows of addiction. I rose to the very, very top and I landed face down, literally face down, face down. So once again, I would like to say that no one has ever, ever, ever made me do anything, made me choose to make these decisions. I made these choices. I was the one who was using, I was the one who was drinking. But I would like to remind each and every one of you that someone is looking up to you, someone is watching you, someone wants what you have, someone wants to be you. We all have idols, we all have things we idolize. Be mindful that if you're out here portraying the life of addiction to be a fun life, a walk in the park, or anything like that, you're doing something wrong because none of this is a walk in the park. None of this is easy. And many of us don't even get the chance to sit here and tell our story. We don't even get the chance to tell people to stop, don't use. Let me take you down the block here and show you where this is going to lead you to. So just be very mindful. Yes, alcohol, you can have a great time, but there are some of us who cannot. And if you are one of those people who somebody is telling you, hey, I really think you need to look at how you're acting, how you're living, don't be so quick to get offended. Really sit back and take a big look. And I will tell you this, if you ever, ever, ever question yourself and you ever feel like you have to ask if you're an alcoholic or an addict, then honey, you are. Because those are not things that we just think of if we are not doing things to lead us to that. So once again, please be mindful. This is not an easy life. Yes, it is fun when you go out there and, for me, it was the adrenaline, and it was the thrill of breaking the law. I knew I could go make these drug runs and I was the least suspect of the group. I was, it was fun. It was fun to go sell and make the money and go spend the money. But it's not fun when you look back and you go, hey, maybe I was the reason why that family broke up. Maybe I was the reason why, if I wouldn't have sold, if I wouldn't have did this. That's a lot to live with. The life of addiction, the life of alcoholism, the life of all of it, it's not easy. There's nothing fun about it. It will eventually catch up with you, and you are going to rise to the top and fall flat on your face. It's only a matter of when and where. So, I would like to thank you all for listening. I hope that you will all come back next Tuesday to see how life took one hell of a turn for me. I thank you for allowing me to, sorry, I'm choked up a little bit, share my story. And I thank you for being kind. And I'm going to leave you with this today. Addiction is a very vicious cycle, and it lives on forever within families and people. But you are not a product of your environment, and you have the ability to change. And if you can do it, if I can do it, you can do it. And if you can do it, they can do it. Let's start setting this example. We can break these cycles, and we can break all of these curses. I wish you all a wonderful weekend. Please stay safe. Please stay sober. Please know that it is okay if you are not okay. And please reach out if you find yourself completely lost. There are people out there to help. So thank you all, and I will be back Tuesday. Until then, much love, guys. Thank you.